Armand was 16 years old, thin as a reed, his shoes patched with pieces of old rubber, his uniform borrowed from a neighbor's son who had long outgrown it. Yet his eyes, sharp, restless, almost defiant, were brighter than any jewel. All his life, people had looked down at him, judged him for his poverty, for his silence, for the way he never asked for more than what was necessary. But now he stood at a turning point. The gates of the wealthiest private school in the city loomed before him, and his fate rested on whether he dared to walk through them. Should he step into a world that was not made for him, a world that would mock him, reject him, crush him? Or should he turn back to the slums where hunger and humiliation waited? And if he walked through those gates, would his hidden gift finally be seen or destroyed forever? The sunlight streamed through the iron bars of the school gate, striking the polished cars lined outside, their silver bodies gleaming like mirrors. Drivers waited in crisp uniforms, opening doors for children in designer shoes and expensive blazers. The laughter of privilege filled the air, easy, careless, unafraid. Parents adjusted ties, mothers kissed cheeks, and money seemed to drip from every corner of the building. But Armand felt none of that brightness. For him, every step toward the gate was heavy. The students brushing past him smelled of perfumes he couldn't name, carrying backpacks worth more than his father had earned in 3 months at the mechanic's shop. His throat tightened, his palms sweated, and he pulled at the sleeve of the too large blazer someone had loaned him. It hung loose on his shoulders, making him look even smaller, even more out of place. Inside, the school was even more intimidating. Marble floors reflected the morning light. The walls were decorated with paintings, golden plaques, and glass cases displaying trophies and medals. Students moved in groups, whispering, giggling, barely noticing him. But when they did notice, their stares lingered too long on his worn shoes, his uneven haircut, his nervous walk. A few even smirked. "Who's he?" a boy muttered loudly. "Scholarship kid," another replied with a laugh. "From the Busty." Armand clenched his fists, but he said nothing. He had grown up hearing words like that. He knew better than to fight. The first bell rang, echoing like a warning. Teachers gathered students in neat lines, calling names. Armand's name was called last, the tone almost dismissive, like a formality. He answered softly, but his voice trembled. The morning assembly began. Hundreds of students stood with perfect posture as the principal entered, a tall, stern man named Mr. Rahim, known for his strictness and pride in the school's reputation. He walked with authority, his gaze sweeping the crowd like a hawk searching for flaws. When his eyes fell on Armand, he paused for a moment, his brows furrowing ever so slightly. He did not speak, but something in his stare made Armand's stomach twist. The anthem was sung, the speeches made. But when the students dispersed into classrooms, Armand remained uneasy. He sat at the last bench of his class, alone. Around him, expensive pens clicked, gadgets beeped, and books with shining covers flipped open. His own notebook was half filled, its pages yellowed, the corners curled. The teacher, Miss Sima, entered and introduced him. "This is Armand. He's joined us on a merit scholarship. I expect you to welcome him." But the welcome never came. Instead, whispers rose again. "A mechanic's son here? Bet he can't even speak proper English. Look at his bag. Pathetic." Armand lowered his gaze, heat burning his face. He wanted to disappear. But just then, Miss Sima began the first lesson, mathematics. Numbers and equations filled the board, problems most students struggled with. Groans and sighs filled the room. And for the first time that morning, Armand's eyes lit up. He loved numbers. They were the only place where he felt in control, where poverty and status did not matter. Equations obeyed him. Problems bowed to him. The teacher asked for volunteers to solve a question. No one raised a hand. Some yawned, others avoided her eyes. Finally, she called out, "Armand? Why don't you try?" A ripple of amusement ran through the class. "This will be fun," someone whispered. Armand stood, his legs shaky. He picked up the chalk, glanced at the board, and then his hesitation vanished. His hand moved quickly, confidently, filling the board with neat steps. Within seconds, the answer was written, flawless. The room went silent. Miss Sima's eyebrows rose. "Correct," she said, surprise in her voice. "Very well done, Armand." But the silence didn't last. Snickers broke out again, sharper this time. "Fluke. Lucky guess. Let's see if he can do it again." So Miss Sima gave him another. Harder. And another. Even harder. Armand solved them all without hesitation. The smirks faded, replaced with uneasy glances. A few students even leaned forward, curious now, not mocking. But one boy at the front, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a blazer with a gold badge, scowled deeply. His name was Zion, the son of a powerful businessman. He was used to being the smartest, the leader, the one teachers praised. And now, this poor boy had stolen the attention. At break time, while students poured out into the courtyard, Zion cornered Armand near the stairwell. "Listen, mechanic boy," Zion said, his voice low but venomous. "Don't think solving a few sums makes you one of us. You don't belong here. Remember that." Armand stared back, his fists clenched again. But he stayed silent. He could not afford trouble. Not on his first day. Yet trouble had already found him. Because later that afternoon, during computer class, something shocking happened. The teacher announced a surprise challenge. Every student had to solve a coding puzzle. Most groaned, tapping randomly at keyboards. But Armand's fingers flew across the keys. He didn't just solve it, he improved it, making the program faster. The teacher's jaw dropped. The class erupted with noise. Some gasped, some clapped, others muttered in disbelief. And at that very moment, Principal Rahim himself walked past the window. He stopped, seeing the teacher's astonishment in Armand's glowing screen. He stepped into the room. Silence fell instantly. His eyes moved from the screen to the boy who sat there, calm, focused, unaware that the most powerful man in the school was now watching him. The principal leaned closer, reading the lines of code. He straightened, his expression unreadable. And then, in a deep voice that made every student sit straighter, he said, "Who taught you this?" Armand looked up slowly. His throat was dry. He opened his mouth to answer. And the bell rang, shattering the tension. Students rushed out, whispering excitedly, throwing glances at Armand. But the principal didn't move. His sharp gaze stayed locked on the boy, like he had seen something he could not quite believe. Armand's heart pounded. He could feel it, the moment that could change everything in his life. But change could be a blessing, or a curse. Would the principal see him as a talent to be nurtured, or a threat to the school's order? Would Zion allow this poor boy to rise, or would he crush him before he could take his first step? Armand lowered his eyes, clutching his notebook tightly. He had no answers. Not yet. But one thing was certain, nothing in this school would ever be simple for him. The next morning, the sky was heavy with clouds. Rain had washed the city streets during the night, leaving puddles in the alleys where Armand lived. He stepped out of the small one-room home he shared with his parents and younger sister, his uniform neatly pressed by his mother despite the old iron hissing steam from coal. His father, grease still on his fingernails from late-night repairs at the mechanic's shop, placed a rough hand on his shoulder. "Armand," he said, voice deep but tired, "don't forget who you are. This school, it's not our world. But if you get this chance, don't let them take it away from you." Armand nodded, the words burning in his chest. He wanted to say something back, something to reassure his father that he would not fail. But the truth was, he was scared. Scared of the principal's eyes yesterday, scared of Zion's threats, scared of being crushed by a world of wealth and pride. Still, he forced a smile for his sister, Sana, who waved goodbye from the doorway with her broken doll in hand. By the time he reached the school gates, the luxury cars were lined up again, umbrellas shielding polished shoes from the wet ground. He walked past them, his own socks already damp. The stares, the whispers, they were sharper today, like blades cutting into his back. Word of yesterday's incident had spread. Everyone was talking about the scholarship boy who coded faster than the teacher. Inside, the tension thickened. Zion and his group of friends sat in the front row, their laughter echoing louder than usual. They wanted to be heard. They wanted Armand to feel small. But the true test began after the first class. The principal himself entered the room. His presence silenced everything instantly. His shoes clicked against the marble floor as he stood at the front, hands clasped behind his back. His sharp eyes scanned the room before landing directly on Armand. "Armand," he said slowly. "Come forward." The boy froze. His throat tightened. Dozens of eyes stabbed into him. He rose slowly, walking toward the man who held his future in his hands. Principal Rahim placed a sheet of paper on the desk. "Yesterday, you surprised many people. But one day's work is not proof of ability. Today, you will take a test. Here. Now." Gasps rippled through the class. A test? On the second day? This was unheard of. Armand stared at the paper. Complicated math problems, logic puzzles, and even a coding challenge written at the bottom. His fingers trembled. "You may begin," the principal said. His tone gave nothing away. For a long moment, the world blurred. The only sound was the ticking of the clock. Then Armand picked up the pen. His breathing steadied. His mind, sharp and disciplined, began weaving through the problems. Numbers aligned in his head, logic shaped itself into answers, and code unfolded like music. One by one, he filled the paper, his hand moving faster, surer. Minutes stretched into an hour. Sweat dampened his brow, but he refused to stop. Finally, he placed the pen down. Principal Rahim lifted the sheet, scanning the answers. His eyes moved quickly, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up. The silence in the room was suffocating. At last, he spoke. "Correct. Every single one." The class erupted with noise. Some clapped, some whispered in disbelief. Zion's jaw tightened. His fists clenched under the desk. But the principal raised his hand, silencing them. His eyes locked on Armand again. "Talent," he said in a low, deliberate voice, "is only the beginning. Discipline, loyalty, and character will decide whether you survive here." Armand bowed his head. "Yes, sir." Yet even as the principal left, murmurs spread like fire. Some students looked at Armand with new respect, others with jealousy, and a few with open hatred. Zion's glare promised one thing: this battle was far from over. The day rolled on, but tension followed Armand like a shadow. During lunch, he sat alone under the banyan tree at the corner of the courtyard, eating the simple roti his mother had packed. Around him, students opened lunchboxes filled with rich food: burgers, fries, pastas. Their laughter rang loud, but their eyes kept drifting toward him. Some mocked, others just stared, curious about the boy who had defied expectations. Suddenly, a voice broke his solitude. "Can I sit here?" Armand looked up, startled. It was Aisha, the girl from his class who had watched him quietly yesterday. She carried a sandwich in her hand, her blazer neatly buttoned, her hair tied back with a ribbon. She wasn't laughing like the others. Her eyes held something else, genuine interest. Armand hesitated. "If you want." She sat beside him, ignoring the whispers that immediately rose from nearby tables. "You're really good," she said softly. "At math. At computers. I've never seen anyone solve so fast." Armand shifted uncomfortably. "It's just practice." "No," she insisted. "It's more than that." Then she lowered her voice. "Be careful of Zion. He doesn't like anyone taking the spotlight away from him." Armand's chest tightened. He already knew this, but hearing it confirmed made it heavier. Before he could reply, a sudden shout echoed across the courtyard. "Hey, scholarship boy!" It was Zion, flanked by his friends. He strode over, holding a football in one hand. "We're playing. You're joining." Armand frowned. "I don't play football." "Then learn," Zion sneered. "Unless you're scared." Laughter erupted from his group. Students gathered, forming a circle. Pressure weighed on Armand from all sides. If he refused, he'd be called a coward. If he agreed, he risked humiliation. Aisha whispered, "Don't. It's a trap." But Armand stood. Something inside him, maybe pride, maybe defiance, pushed him forward. "Fine," he said quietly. The game began. The ball flew fast, students cheered, and Armand tried to keep up. But Zayan's plan was clear, he wasn't playing fairly. He shoved, tripped, and aimed the ball at Armand's legs with unnecessary force. The crowd laughed with every stumble. Finally, Zayan kicked the ball hard. It slammed into Armand's stomach, knocking him to the ground. Laughter exploded. Armand gasped for breath, his body curling in pain. But then, something shifted. The laughter turned to murmurs. Because instead of staying down, Armand pushed himself up, wiping dirt from his face. His eyes burned with fire. He snatched the ball, dribbled past Zayan with surprising speed, and kicked it straight into the goal. The courtyard went silent. Then cheers erupted, from students who weren't in Zayan's circle. They clapped, shouted, even laughed at Zayan's stunned face. Zayan's pride shattered. His glare was murderous. But before he could react, a voice boomed from behind. "What is going on here?" The principal had returned, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene. Students fell silent, stepping back. His gaze locked on Armand again. "You," he said sharply. "Come with me. Now." The crowd gasped. Armand's heart pounded. He followed the principal inside, his steps echoing down the empty hall. He had no idea where he was being taken or what fate awaited him. Would he be punished for standing up against Zayan? Would his scholarship be revoked on the second day? Or had the principal seen something in him worth protecting? The heavy office door shut behind them with a loud click. And for the first time, Armand was alone with the man who could decide the course of his life. The principal's office smelled faintly of old books and polished wood. Heavy curtains dimmed the sunlight, casting long shadows across the room. Rows of trophies gleamed from glass cabinets, silent reminders of the school's history of excellence. Behind the massive desk sat Principal Rahim, his stern face unreadable, his hands folded neatly. Armand stood at the center of the room, his heart thudding in his chest. The silence pressed on him, heavier than any insult he had faced from Zayan or the others. "Sit," the principal ordered, pointing at a chair. Armand obeyed, clutching his bag tightly on his lap. For a long moment, Principal Rahim just studied him. His eyes were sharp, piercing, as though they could see through the boy's thin uniform and straight into his soul. "You have caused quite a stir in this school," the principal began, his voice deep and slow. "2 days, and already the students are whispering your name. Some with respect. Others with ridicule." Armand swallowed. I didn't mean to cause trouble, sir." "Trouble finds those who stand out," the principal said. He leaned back in his chair. "But tell me, do you want to stand out, Armand? Or do you simply want to survive?" The question hit Armand like a stone. He thought of his father's tired hands, his mother's sacrifices, his sister's innocent smile. Survival was what his family needed. But something in him, something fierce, longed to prove himself. "I want to prove that I deserve to be here," he answered quietly. The principal's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something sharper. "Very well. Then prove it." He opened a drawer and placed a thick file on the desk. "Inside this are problems that our senior students, those preparing for international competitions, struggle with. You will attempt one. Here. Now." Armand's chest tightened. This was no ordinary test. This was a trap, or perhaps an opportunity. His fingers trembled as he opened the file. The page was filled with lines of code, broken, tangled, like a maze of confusion. Even he had to blink twice, his sharp mind straining to make sense of it. "This program," the principal said, "is supposed to calculate weather predictions using real-time data. It is faulty. I want you to fix it. Armand stared at the screen of the school computer as the code flashed before him. He had never seen such advanced work before. The silence of the room grew heavier. The principal's eyes burned into his back. Minutes ticked by. His palms grew sweaty. His heart whispered, "This is too much. You'll fail. He'll see you for what you are, a poor boy out of place." But then he heard another voice, his father's, rough yet steady, "Don't let them take this chance away from you." Armand inhaled sharply. His fingers touched the keys. Slowly, steadily, he began untangling the mess. One error at a time. One broken loop after another. He fell into rhythm, the outside world fading until only the code remained. Time slipped away. The clock ticked. The principal's eyes never left him. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only 40 minutes, Armand pressed enter. The program ran smoothly, displaying accurate results. No errors. No crashes. He leaned back, breathless. The principal leaned forward, staring at the screen. For the first time, a flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face. His fingers tapped the desk slowly, thoughtfully. "Who taught you this?" he asked again, his voice quieter now, but sharper. Armand hesitated. "No one, sir. I learned by myself. From books. Old computers in the mechanic's shop. Sometimes at the internet cafe." The principal's brows furrowed. "Impossible. Not at this level." Armand's lips tightened. "It's true, sir." Principal Rahim studied him for a long moment. Then he stood, walking to the window. His hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know why I give such tests, Armand? It is not to humiliate. It is to separate those who shine for a moment, from those who can withstand fire and keep shining." Armand's chest swelled with hope, but also fear. The principal turned suddenly, his eyes narrowing. "But brilliance is dangerous. It attracts envy, jealousy, enemies. Already, you have one." Armand knew instantly who he meant. Zion. "Do not be fooled," the principal continued. "This school is not merely a place of learning. It is a battlefield of families, reputations, power. And you, a mechanic's son, have walked into the center of it." Armand's mouth went dry. "Then, why give me this chance at all?" The principal's eyes locked on him. "Because sometimes, it is the boy with nothing to lose who changes everything." The words struck Armand like thunder. But before he could ask more, the office door creaked open. A peon stepped in, bowing slightly. "Sir, Zion's father is here to see you." The principal's expression darkened. He turned to Armand. "Go. Return to class. But remember this, your greatest test is not solving equations. It is surviving the war that has already begun around you." Armand rose, his legs shaky. He walked out of the office, his mind reeling. The principal's words echoed in his ears like an omen. In the corridor, students whispered again. Some pointed, some smirked, others stared with cautious respect. But Armand barely noticed them. His thoughts spun like a storm. The war had begun? He didn't understand until he turned a corner and froze. There, standing with a smug smile, was Zion. And beside him, a group of boys waited, arms crossed, eyes cold, blocking the path. Zion stepped forward, his voice low but sharp. "Enjoyed your little meeting with the principal, scholarship boy? Don't get too comfortable. Because from today..." He leaned closer, his whisper like poison. "I'm going to make sure you regret ever stepping into this school." Armand's fists clenched. His chest tightened. For the first time, he realized this wasn't about one football match, one test, one class. This was war. And he was alone. The next morning, the rain was gone. The sky blazed with sunlight, and the school gleamed brighter than ever, as though mocking Armand's unease. He walked through the gates with his head bowed, ignoring the cars and the stairs. His father's words still echoed in his mind, "Don't let them take it away from you." But already, he could feel it, the storm building around him. Inside the classroom, Zion sat in his usual front row seat, his blazer perfectly ironed, his shoes polished. His friends leaned close, whispering and snickering. Their eyes kept darting back to Armand. Something was coming. Armand sat at the last bench, trying to focus as Miss Sima began the lesson. She wrote equations on the board, explaining each step. The class listened half-heartedly, some doodling, some yawning. Armand bent over his notebook, scribbling quietly, determined not to give anyone reason to attack him again. But suddenly, "Miss!" Zion's voice cut through the room, smooth but sharp. "I have a suggestion." The teacher turned, surprised. "Yes, Zion?" He smiled, a smile too wide to be innocent. "Since we have a new student, why don't we have a little quiz? To see how much he knows." The class murmured with excitement. All eyes turned to Armand. His stomach clenched. Miss Sima hesitated. "This isn't necessary." "Oh, but it is," Zion interrupted politely, his tone coated in false sweetness. "After all, he's on a scholarship. Shouldn't we make sure he deserves it?" Gasps and whispers filled the room. The trap was clear, yet no one spoke against it. Armand's hands tightened around his pen. He wanted to refuse, to say no. But the thought of his father's tired face, his mother's sacrifices, his sister's hopeful smile, it left him no choice. He nodded slowly. Miss Sima sighed and agreed. "Very well. A quick quiz, then. But on fair terms." She wrote 3 problems on the board, one in algebra, one in geometry, and one in advanced logic. The class groaned. They looked difficult. "Who wants to try first?" she asked. Zion stood confidently. He strode to the board, chalk in hand. He worked through the algebra question, his steps neat but slow. After a few minutes, he solved it. Applause broke out, half real, half forced. He smirked, bowing slightly. Then he tried the geometry problem. His hand hesitated. His steps faltered. Finally, he scribbled an answer. Wrong. Miss Sima shook her head. The class giggled nervously. Zion's jaw tightened, but he hid it with a smile. "And the last problem?" Miss Sima asked. "I'll let our new friend try," Zion said, his eyes glinting with challenge. "Let's see if he's as smart as they say." Armand rose slowly, his legs heavy. He felt every stare piercing into him. He stepped to the board, his hand trembling as he took the chalk. The logic problem sprawled across the board like a monster. Lines of symbols, strange connections, it looked impossible. His throat tightened. Doubt screamed in his head, what if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you lose everything? Then he remembered the principal's words, sometimes, it is the boy with nothing to lose who changes everything. Armand inhaled. He closed his eyes for a moment, blocking out the laughter, the whispers, even Zion's smug face. Then he began. Step by step, line by line, the solution formed. His hand grew steadier. The board filled with neat, precise work. The logic unfolded like a story, each piece clicking into place. Finally, after 10 tense minutes, he circled the answer. Silence. Miss Sima checked the work carefully. Her eyes widened. Then she turned to the class. Correct. A stunned hush fell over the room. For a moment, no one spoke. Then scattered claps broke out. A few students, impressed despite themselves, cheered. But Zion's face darkened. His friends exchanged uneasy glances. Armand turned to return to his seat, but just then, Zion spoke again. Wait. His voice was sharp now, no longer sweet. How do we know he didn't memorize this? Maybe he's cheating. Maybe someone gave him the answers. Gasps filled the room again. Armand froze. Miss Sima frowned. That's enough, Zion. I gave this question myself, he couldn't have seen it before.
But Zion pressed on, his tone rising with false outrage. Or maybe he's pretending. Maybe he's not even poor. Maybe his whole story is fake. Enough. Miss Sima's voice cracked like a whip. Sit down, Zion. Now.
Zion sat, but his glare burned with fury. His trap had failed, but his hatred had only grown stronger. Later, during break, Armand sat quietly under the banyan tree again, his roti untouched. His stomach was too knotted to eat. A shadow fell across him. He looked up, it was Aisha. "You were amazing," she said softly. "The way you solved that, no one could have done it."
Armand gave a faint smile. "It won't matter. Zion won't stop." Aisha hesitated, then lowered her voice. "He's dangerous.
His father, he has influence, money, power. People are afraid to stand against him.
But you humiliated him twice now. He won't forgive you." Armand's chest tightened. "What should I do?"
"Stay strong," she said firmly.
"And don't let him make you doubt yourself." Before Armand could reply, shouts echoed across the courtyard. A group of boys rushed past, laughing, pointing toward the notice board outside the principal's office. Curious murmurs spread. Armand and Aisha followed the crowd.
When they reached the board, Armand froze. Pinned there, in bold letters, was a sheet of paper. His name was written across it.
"Scholarship boy under investigation." Gasps rippled through the students. Whispers grew louder.
Some pointed at him, some covered their mouths in shock.
Armand's vision blurred.
His chest pounded.
What was this? Who had done it? Then, from the edge of the crowd, Zion's smirk appeared. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to.
His eyes said it all.
Armand's knees weakened. His world spun. For the first time since entering the school, he felt not just unwelcome but in danger of losing everything. Was his scholarship really at risk? Had the principal put this notice up? Or had Zion's powerful father already begun his war?
Armand stared at the paper, his heart sinking. Whatever the truth was, his fight had only just begun. The words glared back at him from the notice board. "Scholarship boy under investigation." Armand's throat went dry. His hands trembled. Around him, whispers spread like wildfire. Investigation? What did he do? Maybe he cheated. I knew it was too good to be true. The crowd's voices blended into a storm. Faces blurred, eyes turned sharp, and suddenly the world seemed to tilt beneath Armand's feet. He couldn't breathe. Aisha stood beside him, her face pale with shock. "This can't be real. Someone must have put it there to humiliate you." But before Armand could respond, a deep voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone back to class. Now." It was Principal Rahim. He strode through the crowd, his face like stone. His sharp eyes flicked to the notice. For a moment, his jaw tightened, then, with a swift hand, he tore it down. "Who posted this?" His voice was low, dangerous. The courtyard fell silent. Not a soul spoke. The principal's eyes swept the students, daring someone to answer. No one did. Zion stood at the back, arms crossed, his smirk faint but visible. Finally, Principal Rahim turned to Armand. "Come with me." The crowd parted as Armand followed him. Whispers buzzed behind him like bees. Some pitied him, others were glad to see him fall. Inside the office, the air was heavy. The torn notice lay on the desk, its crumpled words still burning in Armand's mind. The principal sat, his fingers steepled. "Do you understand what this means?" Armand's voice cracked. "No, sir. I didn't. I didn't do anything." "I believe you," the principal said firmly. "But belief is not enough in this place. Power spreads lies faster than truth. Already, rumors will run through the school like fire." Armand's chest tightened. "Then what will happen to me?" The principal leaned back, his eyes narrowing.
An investigation will happen.
Officially, the board will want proof that you earned your scholarship fairly.
Records, tests, background checks. It will not be easy. Armand's stomach dropped. Sir, The principal cut him off. Listen to me. This is not just about your grades. This is about whether you can survive the politics of this school. Do you understand?
Armand nodded weakly, though his heart screamed with fear. The principal's eyes softened just slightly.
Do not break. That is what they want.
The next few days were a blur of tension. Every classroom felt like a courtroom.
Teachers asked sharper questions. Students whispered louder.
Some avoided him, afraid of being linked with him. Others mocked him openly. During lunch, trays of food were accidentally spilled near him. In the computer lab, someone had switched his system settings, corrupting his files. He knew who was behind it, but Zion was always careful, his friends always loyal.
No one dared point a finger.
Through it all, only Aisha stayed near him. She sat with him under the banyan tree, her voice calm, her presence steady.
You can't let them win, Armand.
If you give up, they'll be right.
But if you keep standing, you'll prove them wrong.
Her words gave him strength, but not enough to erase the dread in his chest.
Then, one afternoon, the storm broke. It was during math class. The teacher handed out test papers, a surprise assessment.
The results of this will be sent to the board, she announced.
It will help them in their review. Armand's blood ran cold. This was it.
His chance or his downfall.
The paper landed on his desk.
He stared at the questions, his mind racing. They were difficult, but solvable. He steadied his breathing, his pencil moving steadily, carefully.
For a while, the world disappeared, just numbers and logic guiding him.
But halfway through, something strange happened. His pencil scratched across the page and stopped.
His eyes widened. The problem was wrong. Not difficult, wrong. It was written with missing information, impossible to solve. He looked up.
Around him, students groaned, struggled, scribbled nonsense answers. Even the bright ones looked lost. But then his eyes caught something. Zion, at the front row, smirked. He wrote calmly, his answers neat, his hand steady.
Armand's stomach twisted.
Zion had the correct version. The others had been given broken ones. And his own paper, his chance to prove himself, was a trap. His chest pounded. Should he raise his hand, call it out, risk being seen as a complainer? Or should he try to solve the unsolvable, and fail? He thought of his father's tired eyes. His mother's silent prayers.
Sanaa's small smile. He couldn't fail. Not now.
Closing his eyes, Armand breathed deeply.
Think. He studied the problem again. Though incomplete, patterns emerged.
He guessed at the missing information, piecing together fragments. Slowly, carefully, he built a path to the answer. It wasn't perfect, but it was logical. He finished just as the bell rang. The papers were collected.
Zion's smug glance cut across the room, sharp as a knife. That evening, Armand couldn't eat. He sat outside his small home, staring at the streetlights flickering in the night.
His father sat beside him, wiping grease from his hands.
"You're quiet," his father said. Armand hesitated.
"Baba, what if they take my scholarship away?" His father looked at him, his eyes tired but fierce.
"Then we fight. That's what we do. We don't bow down to lies."
Armand wanted to believe him.
But deep inside, fear gnawed.
The next morning, the results were pinned to the board. Students gathered, buzzing with excitement. Armand pushed through the crowd, his heart racing. His eyes scanned the list.
And froze.
Beside his name, in red letters, it said,
"Failed." Gasps erupted around him.
Whispers turned to laughter.
Zion's chuckle rang above them all. Armand's hands shook. He stared at the word, his vision blurring. He knew. He knew he hadn't failed. He had written answers, logical, correct. This was not a mistake. This was sabotage. But how? Who had changed his paper? And why was the principal silent? His knees weakened, his chest burned, and for the first time, doubt crashed over him like a wave. Had the war already been lost? The laughter echoed through the corridor like knives cutting into Armand's skin. Every whisper, every mocking glance, weighed on him like chains. Failed? I knew he wasn't that smart. All that scholarship talk, what a joke. Guess money really does buy brains. Armand stood frozen, staring at the board. The letters failed glared back at him, mocking him, crushing him. His throat tightened. His chest burned. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Aisha's voice cut through the storm. This is wrong. I saw your paper, you solved most of it. You couldn't have failed. But before he could reply, Zion's voice rang out behind them, loud enough for all to hear. Of course he failed. Did you think a mechanic's son could beat us? He probably cheated to get in, and now his real face is showing. The crowd snickered. Armand's fists clenched. His nails dug into his palms until they hurt. Every fiber of his being screamed to shout back, to expose the injustice. But his voice trembled in his throat. If he lost control now, Zion would win. Principal Rahim appeared suddenly, his cane tapping against the floor. The laughter hushed instantly. His sharp gaze swept the students before landing on Armand. Armand, the principal said firmly. My office. Now. The room was heavy with silence. Armand sat stiffly on the chair across from the principal's desk. The failed test paper lay between them, its red stamp like a wound. Principal Rahim's face was unreadable. His fingers tapped the desk slowly. Finally, he spoke. Do you have an explanation? Armand's voice cracked. Sir, I didn't fail. The problem was incomplete, but I worked through it logically. I know my answers were right. The principal studied him carefully. And yet, this is the result. Armand's stomach twisted. Then someone changed my paper. Someone wants me out. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed the principal's stern face. His eyes narrowed, and his jaw tightened. But his words were calm. Do you realize what you're accusing, boy? To claim tampering is to accuse this institution itself. That is not a small thing. I don't care, Armand said, his voice steadier now, fire sparking in his chest. I didn't cheat. I didn't fail. This is not my mistake. The principal leaned back, folding his arms. His eyes held a strange weight, as if testing him. Very well. If you insist, then you must prove it. Armand blinked. How? You will face a special oral exam tomorrow, the principal said. In front of senior staff. If you can solve their questions, your name will be cleared. If you cannot, his voice lowered, your scholarship will be revoked immediately. The words crashed into Armand like thunder. One chance. One test. His future on the line. Armand's voice barely rose above a whisper. And if I succeed? The principal's eyes hardened. Then the truth will have no place to hide. That night, the little house was silent. His mother prayed in the corner, beads sliding through her fingers. His father sat beside Armand, wiping sweat from his brow after another long shift at the workshop. Sana curled up in her blanket, pretending to sleep, but her eyes shone with worry. Armand's books lay open on the floor. Equations, formulas, problems covered the pages. His pencil scratched late into the night. Every question he solved was a step away from despair. Every mistake felt like a dagger. At one point, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. Son, don't let fear eat you. Remember, the ones who lie are afraid of the truth. You just have to stand firm.
Armand swallowed hard, his father's words settling into his heart. But when dawn crept through the window, his hands were still trembling. The next day, the examination room felt like a courtroom. A long table stretched across the front, where 4 senior teachers sat with stern faces. Principal Rahim stood at the side, arms folded, watching silently. Students crowded outside the windows, whispering. The air buzzed with anticipation, as if the whole school held its breath. Armand walked to the center, his heart pounding. His palms were sweaty, his throat dry. He felt every eye on him. One of the teachers cleared his throat. Armand, you will solve the problems we give you. No notes. No calculator. Just your mind. Are you ready? Armand nodded, though his knees shook. The first problem came. He stared at the numbers on the board, panic rising in his chest. But then he remembered Aisha's words, don't let them win. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and let the logic guide him. Step by step, he solved it. The second came harder, sharper, designed to break him. He hesitated, sweat dripping down his temple. But slowly, painfully, he found the answer. The third, an advanced concept beyond his grade level. A murmur rippled through the students outside. Even some teachers frowned. Armand's heart sank. They want me to fail. His hand shook as he picked up the chalk. The board blurred before his eyes. For a moment, he thought he would collapse. And then, he remembered his father's words. The ones who lie are afraid of the truth. His grip steadied. He began to write. Piece by piece, the solution formed. His voice grew stronger as he explained each step, his logic clear, undeniable. When he placed the chalk down, the room was silent. One teacher leaned forward, eyes wide. Correct. Gasps erupted outside the window. A few students even clapped, though they quickly stopped under the principal's gaze. Armand's chest heaved. Relief flooded him. He had done it. But then, just as he dared to breathe, another voice spoke. Sir, a teacher said slowly. If he is this capable, then how do you explain his failure yesterday? The question hung in the air like a blade. All eyes turned to Principal Rahim. His face was unreadable. His silence was thunderous. Then, suddenly, footsteps echoed in the corridor. A man burst into the room, holding a file. His face was pale, his hands trembling. I found this in the records, he stammered, handing it to the principal. The principal opened it. His eyes scanned the page, then narrowed. His hand clenched around the paper. He looked up, his voice cold as steel. Someone switched the answer sheets. The room exploded in whispers. Students pressed against the windows. Teachers exchanged shocked glances. Armand's heart raced. The truth was finally cracking open. But before he could speak, a chilling thought struck him. If the papers had been switched, who was powerful enough to reach the records? His eyes darted toward the crowd outside. Zion's face stared back, pale but defiant. And in that moment, Armand knew this was only the beginning. The words "someone switched the answer sheets" still echoed in the hallways long after the special exam had ended. It spread like a spark in dry grass, students whispered it in corners, teachers spoke of it behind closed doors, and the whole school buzzed with one question. If Armand didn't fail, then who wanted him to? For the first time since the nightmare began, Armand walked with his head high. Students who once mocked him now looked at him with a mix of respect and fear. Some even whispered, "He's brilliant," as he passed. But he also felt something darker. He could feel eyes on him, sharp and watching, waiting for him to stumble. And among those eyes, one pair burned the fiercest Zion's. At lunch the next day, the atmosphere was heavy. Aisha sat across from Armand, her voice low. You won, Armand. You proved yourself. But you don't look happy. Armand stabbed at his rice with his spoon, his jaw tight. Because it's not over. Someone had the power to tamper with the records. That's not a prank, it's something bigger. And I know who it is.
Aisha leaned closer. Zion? Armand's eyes flicked to the corner of the cafeteria. Zion sat with his usual circle, laughing, relaxed, as though he hadn't a care in the world. But every now and then, his gaze slid toward Armand, cold, calculating. Yes, Armand whispered. But how do I prove it? That evening, Principal Rahim called Armand into his office again. The room was dim, lit only by the yellow glow of a desk lamp. The principal stood by the window, his back turned. Armand, he said quietly, your performance yesterday impressed the staff. But you must understand, truth alone does not protect you here. Armand frowned. Then what does? The principal turned, his face lined with years of battles no one spoke about. Power. Connections. This school isn't just a place of learning, it's a battlefield. And the children of the powerful, they play dirtier than you can imagine. Armand's chest tightened. So what should I do? Stay quiet? Let them crush me? The principal's gaze pierced him. No. You must learn to fight in their world, but without becoming like them. Armand didn't fully understand, but the weight of the words stayed with him. The next morning, the trap began to tighten. As Armand entered class, a teacher stopped him. You're late. That's a mark against your record. But, sir, I came early, Armand protested. The teacher frowned. Not according to the register. Someone signed you in late. Confused, Armand went to his locker only to find it broken open, his notes torn, pages scattered. During sports, his shoes mysteriously disappeared, replaced with ones too small for him. Everywhere he turned, sabotage followed. But when he tried to speak up, it was always brushed aside as coincidence or carelessness. Aisha clenched her fists when she saw his books ruined. This isn't coincidence. This is a plan. They're trying to push you until you break. Armand's jaw tightened. Then I won't break. But the pressure only grew worse. That week, an announcement shook the school. Annual talent showcase mandatory for all scholarship students. It was the grand event of the year, where students displayed not only their skills but also their social standing. The rich brought instruments, costumes, choreographers, even private tutors. For Armand, who had nothing but his books and a tired father struggling at the workshop, it was an impossible mountain. Whispers spread quickly. He'll embarrass himself. Poor boy won't even be able to participate. Maybe that will finally push him out. Zion, of course, played his role perfectly. He approached Armand in front of everyone, his tone dripping with false sympathy. Armand, I almost feel bad for you. Almost. But don't worry, if you need an audience to laugh at your performance, I'll be there. His friends roared with laughter. Armand's fists clenched, but he didn't reply. He couldn't afford to lose control now. That night, Armand sat on the roof of his house, staring at the stars. His sister Sana joined him, her tiny feet padding softly on the bricks. Bye, she said, tugging his sleeve, are you scared? Armand hesitated. A little. Sana's eyes shone with innocence. But you're smart. You always win, nah? Just show them who you are. Her words, so simple, struck deep. Armand looked at her, then at the endless sky above. Maybe this wasn't just about surviving anymore. Maybe it was about showing everyone that talent wasn't locked behind wealth. The next day, he made his decision. He approached the notice board where students were signing up for the showcase. Dozens of names already filled the sheet: music, dance, drama, debates. Armand took the pen, his hand steady, and wrote in bold letters. Armand Khan, Mathematics and Logic Demonstration. Gasps rippled through the hallway. Mathematics? At a showcase? What kind of boring act is that? He's going to humiliate himself. Zion's laugh cut through the air. Perfect. When the whole school laughs at you, maybe you'll finally learn your place. Armand ignored him, his heart steady. He wasn't here to please them. He was here to prove something bigger. But deep inside, he also knew this would make him an even bigger target. And somewhere in the shadows of the hallway, a plan was already being written against him. The trap was not loosening. It was tightening. The morning of the annual talent showcase arrived with a kind of energy that made the school grounds feel alive. The auditorium shimmered under bright lights, its red velvet curtains drawn, the stage polished until it gleamed. Families poured in, dressed in fine clothes, their perfumes and chatter filling the air. Parents of powerful businessmen, politicians, and celebrities sat proudly in the front rows, eager to watch their children dazzle. Backstage, chaos reigned. Students rushed with costumes, musical instruments, and props. Assistants and servants hurried about, carrying boxes, adjusting lights, setting microphones. In the middle of it all stood Armand, quiet but steady. He wore no glittering costume, held no instrument, and carried no props. Just a notebook in his hand, his name written on the performance list, mathematics and logic demonstration. Other students laughed as they passed him. Math? At a talent show? Does he think numbers will make the crowd clap? He'll be the joke of the night. Zion strutted past, his silver jacket sparkling under the lights. His act was a choreographed dance with a full band, rehearsed for weeks with professionals. He paused near Armand, lowering his voice. You really don't learn, do you? Tonight, when the lights hit you, the whole world will laugh. And I'll be there in the front row. Armand met his gaze calmly. Better to be laughed at for trying than pitted for being a coward. Zion's smile faltered, just for a second, before twisting back into a smirk. Inside the auditorium, Principal Rahim sat in the corner of the front row, his expression unreadable. Teachers bustled around, making final checks. He had already noticed the whispers about Armand's unusual choice. Some staff were skeptical, others openly dismissive. But the principal said nothing. He simply waited. The lights dimmed. The host took the stage, announcing the beginning of the showcase. Cheers erupted as the first act began, a violin solo that echoed beautifully across the hall. Then came a poetry recital, followed by a group dance. Parents applauded loudly, some even standing, showering their children with pride. Backstage, Armand waited, his palms sweating. Each cheer for the others made his chest tighten. His turn was creeping closer, and with it, the fear of humiliation. Aisha slipped behind the curtains, her face glowing with determination. You can do this, she whispered. You've already proven you're smart. Tonight, prove that intelligence can be beautiful too. Armand nodded, her words steadying his trembling hands. Finally, the host's voice boomed. Next, we have Armand Khan, presenting a mathematics and logic demonstration. The applause was polite but thin. Whispers rippled through the audience. Mathematics? In a showcase? Whose child is this? What a strange idea. Armand walked onto the stage, his steps heavy, his throat dry. The spotlight hit him, blinding and hot. From the darkness beyond, he could feel hundreds of eyes piercing him, doubtful, mocking, expectant of failure. He reached the board that had been placed for him, picked up the chalk, and faced the crowd. For a heartbeat, the silence crushed him. Then he spoke. Good evening. I know most of you didn't come here to see numbers on a board. But I want to show you something different. Something beautiful. Mathematics isn't just about numbers, it's about patterns, about truth. And tonight, I'll prove it to you. A ripple of murmurs moved through the hall. Some parents raised eyebrows, others leaned forward with mild curiosity. Armand turned to the board, his hand steadying. He began with a simple puzzle, a riddle in numbers, easy enough for everyone to follow. He explained step by step, his voice growing stronger, more confident. When the solution revealed itself, clear and elegant, gasps rose from the younger students in the crowd. Even some parents clapped softly. Encouraged, Armand moved to a harder problem, a logic puzzle that twisted in ways unexpected, yet satisfying when solved. His explanation was clear, almost like a story, pulling the audience along until the answer unfolded. For the first time, the crowd was silent, not out of boredom, but attention.
Even those who had doubted now leaned forward, caught in the web of his logic.
Armand's heart lifted. He had them. He was showing them that brilliance wasn't about wealth or power, it was about truth shining through.
But just as he turned to the final problem, ready to end with a flourish, something strange happened.
The chalk snapped in his hand.
He frowned, reaching for another piece only to find the entire tray missing. His board had been wiped, and his notebook, where he had written his outline, was gone. A wave of whispers rose from the crowd. The spotlight suddenly felt hotter, heavier.
Armand's stomach dropped.
Someone had sabotaged him. From the corner of his eye, he saw Zion in the front row, his smirk wide and cruel.
Armand's hands shook.
He had no notes, no chalk, no plan.
The audience was restless, shifting, whispering.
The host moved toward the stage, ready to end the act.
And in that terrifying moment, Armand realized he had two choices.
Step down, humiliated, proving Zion right. Or take the risk of improvising in front of hundreds, with nothing but his mind. The choice would decide not only his performance, but his place in the school forever.
The stage lights burned into his skin. The murmurs from the audience grew louder, restless.
Armand could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing down on him. His board was clean, his chalk tray gone, his notebook missing. It was as if someone had ripped the ground from beneath his feet. From the front row, Zion leaned back in his chair, arms folded smugly, his smile sharp as a blade. This was his victory, and he knew it. The host stepped forward, whispering into the mic, "It seems there's a little issue. Perhaps we should move on." "No." The word slipped from Armand's mouth before he could think. His voice trembled but grew stronger as he repeated it.
"No. I'm not done." Gasps rippled through the audience.
Armand turned to face them, his chest heaving.
Someone took my notes. Someone erased the board. But mathematics doesn't live on paper. It lives here. He tapped his temple. And here. He placed a hand on his chest. So if you'll allow me,
I'll show you something without chalk, without books.
Just logic. The crowd murmured. Some were intrigued, others skeptical.
Principal Rahim's eyes narrowed, watching closely.
Armand took a deep breath.
His heart raced, his palms were sweaty, but his voice grew steadier as he spoke.
"I'll give you a puzzle. Right now. And I'll guide you through it. All you need is your mind." He scanned the audience, then raised his voice.
"Imagine you are on a boat with exactly 100 coins. You must divide them among 10 passengers. The rule is, every passenger must get at least 1 coin, and no 2 passengers can get the same number.
How would you do it?"
The hall fell silent. Parents leaned toward each other, whispering.
Students frowned, trying to solve it.
Even the teachers tilted their heads in thought.
Armand's pulse pounded, but he pressed on.
He began guiding them step by step, breaking down possibilities, eliminating contradictions, building toward the solution. His words flowed like water, his logic crisp, his tone alive with passion.
Slowly, the puzzle unfolded.
By the time he revealed the answer, the auditorium was buzzing, not with mockery, but with astonishment.
Some even clapped without realizing it. But Armand wasn't done.
He raised his hand, silencing the applause. His eyes glinted with fire.
"One more," he said.
This time, he spun a riddle of patterns hidden in everyday life, the rhythm of footsteps, the growth of leaves, the beat of a drum. He connected them back to mathematical sequences, showing how beauty and truth existed everywhere, if only one looked.
The audience leaned forward, hooked.
Parents who had dismissed him now whispered in awe. Even the skeptical teachers exchanged glances, nodding reluctantly. And for the first time, Armand saw something new in their eyes, respect. But then, just as he was about to end, a loud voice cut through the hall.
"This is all nonsense." Gasps erupted.
All eyes turned to see Zion standing from his seat, his voice booming with false confidence.
"He's making it up as he goes. None of this proves anything. It's just words."
The crowd murmured in confusion.
Doubt began to creep back in. Armand's chest tightened. He could feel his fragile victory slipping away. If he lost them now, it would all collapse. Slowly, he turned to Zion, his voice calm but cutting. Then test me. The hall went silent. Armand stepped forward. Ask me any problem. Right here, right now. And if I cannot solve it, I'll step down. Gasps filled the auditorium. Students whispered furiously. Even the teachers shifted in their seats. Zion's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. He raised his hand dramatically. Fine. Let's see if you're as clever as you pretend. He posed a question, an advanced puzzle, far beyond their grade, designed to trap Armand. Whispers spread, that's impossible. He won't solve it. Armand closed his eyes. For a moment, fear surged. His mind spun, searching, reaching. Then, clarity struck. The answer pieced itself together like shards of light forming a whole. He opened his eyes, his voice steady. Step by step, he broke it down, his reasoning sharp, his explanation flawless. And when he reached the solution, silence crashed over the hall. Then thunderous applause erupted. Students cheered, teachers clapped, even some parents stood. The hall shook with the sound. Armand stood tall, chest heaving, eyes blazing. He had not just survived, he had conquered. But in the middle of the roaring applause, his gaze locked with Zion's. The boy's face was pale, his jaw clenched, his fists trembling. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because Zion wasn't just angry. He was humiliated. And humiliation was far more dangerous than anger. The applause still echoed in the vast auditorium, bouncing off the walls like thunder. Students were on their feet, clapping, whistling, and cheering. Parents shook their heads in disbelief at the poor boy who had turned an impossible situation into a triumph. Even Principal Rahim, a man who rarely let emotion cross his face, allowed a faint smile as he adjusted his glasses. But in one corner of the hall, Zion sat stiffly, his fists curled tight on his lap. His classmates noticed his expression and whispered, trying to hide their laughter. For a boy who had ruled the school stage for years, being overshadowed by someone like Armand was unthinkable. The humiliation boiled in his chest like fire. His smirk was gone, replaced with a cold, trembling rage. Armand, still catching his breath, glanced toward the front row. He saw the thunderous applause, the nods from teachers, the sparkle of respect in unfamiliar eyes, but then his gaze met Zion's. The look chilled him. Zion's eyes weren't just angry, they were dangerous. They carried a silent promise, this isn't over. Armand's smile faltered, but he straightened his shoulders. For now, he had won. But he knew deep down, this victory had made him a target. After the program ended, crowds swarmed Armand. Students who had mocked him earlier now reached out to shake his hand. Parents patted his shoulder. Even some teachers congratulated him with genuine admiration. Brilliant, boy. Simply brilliant, said one elderly teacher, her eyes twinkling. You made mathematics alive, another whispered. Armand's cheeks flushed, not from pride, but from relief. For the first time, he felt like he belonged, if only for a fleeting moment. But then he felt a rough shove on his shoulder. He stumbled slightly and turned. It was Zion. The hall was clearing, the noise dying down, but the tension between them cut sharp. Zion leaned close, his voice low and venomous. Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts, slum boy. Because I'll make sure it burns you alive. Armand froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. By the time he gathered himself, Zion had walked away, his shoulders stiff, his eyes cold. That night, back in his small rented room, Armand replayed the day in his mind. The applause, the respect, the way his words had lit up the room, it should have been the happiest memory of his life. Yet, Zion's final threat gnawed at him. Amy noticed his silence as they ate dinner. Why so quiet, Beta? Didn't your big day go well? Armand hesitated, then forced a smile. It went fine, Amy. Very fine.
But in his chest, unease grew heavier.
The next morning, whispers spread like wildfire through the school corridors. Did you hear? Armand destroyed Zion yesterday.
I couldn't believe it, that puzzle. Even my father said it was genius.
Zion looked like he was going to explode.
Laughter filled the hallways, and though none of it reached Armand directly, Zion heard it all. Every word stabbed deeper, every giggle burned hotter. His pride, carefully built over years, lay in ruins because of one poor boy. And pride was something Zion could never let go of. In class, the teacher praised Armand openly.
Your improvisation yesterday was remarkable. A lesson to us all. Knowledge is not memorization, it is understanding.
The class clapped, and Armand felt his ears redden. But while he looked down shyly, Zion's eyes bored into him, unblinking. That glare was worse than words.
By lunch break, Zion was gone.
His closest friends whispered nervously among themselves. They had never seen him like this, silent, brooding, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Later, in the secluded parking area behind the school, Zion met with two of his rougher friends, boys who thrived on mischief and intimidation. He humiliated me in front of everyone, Zion spat, pacing.
Do you know what that means? My name, my image, it's ruined.
And all because of him. One of the boys shrugged.
So? Get him back. Make him regret it.
Zion stopped pacing, his jaw tightening.
I don't want him to regret. I want him to break. Completely. No one should dare laugh at me again.
The other boy smirked.
Then say the word. We'll handle it. Zion's lips curled into a dangerous smile.
Meanwhile, Armand sat quietly in the library, unaware of the storm brewing. He had opened a math book, but his mind wandered. He thought of Amy's tired face, of their unpaid rent, of the chance that maybe, just maybe, this new respect could open doors for him. But beneath the hope lurked a shadow, Zion's promise.
Armand closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the desk.
He whispered to himself, "Stay strong.
No matter what, stay strong."
He had no idea how soon that strength would be tested. That evening, as he left school, the sky turned orange with sunset. The campus was quiet, the halls empty. He walked slowly toward the gate, his bag slung over his shoulder.
Suddenly, he sensed it. Footsteps. Shadows behind him.
He turned and froze. Zion stood there, flanked by the two boys from earlier. Their faces were dark with intent, their fists clenched.
Going home, hero?
Zion's voice was calm, almost mocking. Or should we give you a special farewell first?
Armand's heart pounded.
He tightened his grip on his bag strap, his eyes darting to the empty road ahead.
No teachers. No students. No one. He was trapped.
The quiet road outside the school felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself carried warning. The faint glow of the sunset stretched shadows long across the ground, making Zion and his friends look taller, darker, more menacing.
Armand clutched his bag tighter, every instinct telling him to run.
But his legs felt glued to the earth.
Zion's smirk returned, sharp and cruel. What's the matter, slum boy? No chalk, no board, no audience to clap for you now. Just us. And we don't clap.
One of the boys cracked his knuckles. The other pulled out Armand's missing notebook, the one that had vanished before the competition.
Armand's breath caught. That's mine.
The boy flipped through the pages, then tore one clean out. He crumpled it slowly, letting the paper fall at Armand's feet. Zion's voice was soft, but every word dripped venom.
Yesterday, you embarrassed me.
You turned the whole school against me.
Do you know what that feels like? To hear them laugh at me?
His eyes burned.
You need to learn your place. And tonight, you will. Armand's chest tightened.
Fear clawed at him, but deep down, something stronger stirred, a flicker of defiance. He straightened his shoulders. I didn't embarrass you, Zion, he said quietly.
You did that yourself. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Silence. Then Zion's face twisted in rage. Hold him. The two boys lunged. Armand tried to dodge, but they were faster. One grabbed his arms, pinning them behind his back, while the other shoved him hard against the wall. His bag tumbled to the ground. Zion stepped forward, his hand curled into a fist. Armand braced himself. The punch landed on his stomach, knocking the air out of him. He gasped, his body doubling over. Zion hit him again, this time across the face. Pain exploded in Armand's cheek, his vision blurring. The other boys laughed. But then, footsteps echoed from the far side of the road. Oi! What's happening here? The three froze. A security guard from the school gate had spotted them, his flashlight beam cutting through the dusk. In an instant, Zion signaled his friends, and they released Armand. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his side. By the time the guard reached, the three boys were already walking away casually, pretending nothing had happened. Zion even smiled, calling out, "Good evening, sir." Just heading home. The guard frowned but didn't press. He turned his light on Armand, who was struggling to pick up his bag. "Are you all right, Beta?" Armand forced a weak nod. I'm fine." But inside, he wasn't. That night, at home, Amy noticed the bruises. She gasped, rushing to him. "Armand! What happened? Who did this?" He shook his head quickly. I slipped on the stairs. Nothing serious." Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't convinced. But seeing his silence, she didn't press further. Instead, she stroked his hair, whispering, "No matter what happens, Beta, don't let anyone break your spirit. You're stronger than you know." Her words were warm, but the ache in his body and heart told a different story. The next day at school, whispers spread again. Some students noticed Armand's bruises. A few asked gently, "Are you okay?" but most stayed quiet, afraid of Zion's wrath. Zion, on the other hand, walked the halls with renewed arrogance. His friends slapped his back, laughing loudly, as if nothing had happened. But Principal Rahim noticed something. He saw Armand limping slightly. He saw the shadows under his eyes. And he saw the forced smile that tried to hide the pain. The principal said nothing then, but a storm of questions brewed in his mind. That afternoon, as classes ended, Armand sat alone in the library again. He tried to focus on his books, but the words blurred. He could still feel the sting of Zion's fist, the helplessness of being cornered. He whispered to himself, "Is this the price of talent? To be punished for it?" Yet even as despair tugged at him, a quiet flame of determination rose inside. "No. I won't give up. I won't let them win." But just as he thought it, a shadow fell across the table. He looked up and froze. Zion stood there, smiling faintly. His friends blocked the exit behind him. "Missed us, genius?" Zion whispered. Armand's blood ran cold. This time, there was no security guard nearby. The library was supposed to be silent, a safe haven filled with nothing but the rustle of pages and the smell of old books. But now, with Zion standing over him, that silence turned heavy, suffocating. Armand's hands clenched around his notebook. His pulse quickened as he glanced at the exit, blocked by Zion's friends. He was trapped again. Zion leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. "You think you're clever? That one little performance makes you my equal? No, Armand. You humiliated me. And nobody humiliates me without paying a price." Armand swallowed hard. "If you're so strong, then why are you afraid of me?" The words slipped out before he could stop them. His own boldness shocked him. For a moment, Zion froze. Then his face twisted, and he slammed his hand on the table so hard the books rattled. "Afraid of you," he hissed. "You're nothing but dirt under my shoes." His friends laughed cruelly. One of them whispered, "Should we teach him another lesson right here?" Zion's lips curled. Yes. This time, he won't forget it. Just as one of the boys grabbed Armand's collar, the library door creaked open. Is everything all right here? It was Mr. Hamid, the stern history teacher, carrying a stack of files. His sharp eyes instantly scanned the scene, Armand pinned against the table, Zion looming over him, the smirks of his friends. The boys quickly stepped back, pretending to browse books. Zion forced a smile. Of course, sir. We were just helping Armand with his notes. Mr. Hamid raised a brow. His voice cut like a blade. Helping? From where I stand, it looked more like threatening. Zion stammered, and no, sir, you must have misunderstood. But Armand's silence spoke volumes. His bruised face, the tension in his posture, the fear in his eyes, it all painted the truth. Mr. Hamid's gaze hardened. Zion, in my office. Now. And you two go back to class. Immediately. Zion hesitated, anger flashing in his eyes, but he obeyed. For now. As the boys left, Mr. Hamid placed a hand on Armand's shoulder. You don't have to fight alone, Beta. Remember that. Armand's throat tightened. He nodded silently. But once outside, Zion's mask of obedience shattered. He kicked a locker violently, his friends flinching at the sound. That old fool won't always be around, he growled. And when he's not, Armand will pay. I swear it. His pride, once cracked, was now shattered, and with it, his restraint. That evening, Armand sat by the window of his small room, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. His bruises still ached, but his heart hurt more. He whispered to himself, why? Why can't he just let me live? What have I done wrong, except try? Amy entered quietly, setting a simple meal on the table. She looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. You're carrying too much alone, Armand. Share your pain with someone. A wound heals faster when it's not hidden. Armand looked at her, tears stinging his eyes, but he forced a smile. I'm fine, Amy. Don't worry. But deep inside, he knew things were spiraling. The next day, an announcement shook the school. Principal Rahim called a special meeting for advanced students. A new academic competition was coming, a citywide contest with scholarship opportunities. The winner would not only bring pride to the school but also secure a future-changing reward. The hall buzzed with excitement. Students whispered eagerly, parents looked hopeful, and teachers exchanged glances. Armand's heart pounded. This was it, his chance. But then he heard Zion's voice, loud and arrogant. That prize is mine. No poor street rat will stand in my way. His eyes locked on Armand across the room, his glare sharper than ever. Armand looked back, his fear clashing with determination. He could almost hear Amy's voice in his heart, don't let anyone break your spirit. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was war. The assembly hall buzzed like a hive of bees. Students whispered excitedly, their eyes wide with curiosity as Principal Rahim stepped up to the podium. His presence was commanding as always, tall, composed, his sharp glasses glinting under the lights. He raised a hand, and the hall fell silent. Students, he began, his deep voice echoing, our school has been selected to participate in the upcoming citywide academic Olympiad. The best minds from across the city will compete in mathematics, science, and problem-solving challenges. This is not just any competition, it is a gateway to scholarships, recognition, and opportunities that can change a student's future. A wave of murmurs spread through the hall. Some gasped in excitement, others exchanged nervous glances. Rahim continued, each school may send 2 representatives. I will personally oversee the selection process. Only those who show true knowledge, dedication, and integrity will be chosen. His eyes swept across the students. They paused on Armand for a brief moment, then shifted to Zion. The tension was palpable. As soon as the assembly ended, the corridors exploded with chatter. Imagine if you win, you could get into any university. They say companies even sponsor winners. My parents would faint if I brought home that trophy. Among the chatter, one voice rose above all. Zion, striding confidently with his clique, declared, "This competition is mine.
I'll bring the trophy here, like always.
No one can touch me."
His friends laughed and nodded eagerly.
But some students, remembering Armand's brilliance during the talent showcase, exchanged doubtful glances. Could Zion really crush Armand this time?
In the quiet of the library, Armand sat alone, his fingers tracing the worn edges of his notebook. The thought of the Olympiad both thrilled and terrified him. A chance for a scholarship, a way out of poverty, a chance to ease his mother's struggles, it was everything he dreamed of. But then came the shadow of Zion, and the memory of his fists, his threats, his cruelty. Armand whispered to himself, "If I win, he'll never forgive me." But then he remembered Amy's words, "Don't let anyone break your spirit." He closed his notebook with a determined snap. "Then I'll fight. Not for pride. For her." Meanwhile, in Zion's lavish home, the mood was very different. He stormed into his father's study, his face red with frustration. "Abba, you have to make sure I'm picked for the Olympiad," he demanded.
"This is my reputation. If anyone else gets chosen, especially that street boy, it'll be a disgrace."
His father, a wealthy businessman, looked up from his papers with calm indifference.
"Zion, winning is not just about appearances. It's about results." "I will win," Zion insisted. "But you must ensure Raheen doesn't even consider that boy. He doesn't belong in this competition."
His father sighed, swirling the tea in his cup.
"Leave it to me. Money speaks louder than talent." Zion's smirk returned. "Good. Because I won't rest until Armand is crushed."
The next morning, notices were pinned on the school board. The principal announced the selection process, a series of written tests, oral exams, and interviews. Students crowded around the board, murmuring nervously. Armand stood quietly at the back, reading the notice with wide eyes. His heart raced. This was real. A gentle hand tapped his shoulder. He turned to see Mr. Hamid, the history teacher who had once intervened.
"Don't let fear hold you back, Beta," Hamid said softly. "You have a gift. Use it."
Armand nodded, a flicker of hope sparking inside.
Days turned into nights of preparation.
Armand studied under the dim light of a single bulb, his mother sewing clothes quietly in the corner. Sometimes she looked up, her tired eyes shining with pride as she watched him scribble equations and notes with fierce determination. At school, whispers grew louder.
"Did you see how hard Armand is studying? Maybe he has a chance." Zion heard them all.
Each word was like a knife to his pride.
So, he began to plan. On the day of the first test, the tension in the exam hall was thick.
Dozens of students sat with papers before them, pens poised, hearts racing. Armand closed his eyes for a moment, whispering a prayer. Then he began to write. His answers flowed like water, his mind sharp despite the nerves.
Zion, seated 2 rows away, kept stealing glances.
He ground his teeth as he saw Armand's confident strokes across the page. When the papers were collected, the whispers started again.
Armand finished first. He looked so sure. Zion clenched his fists under the desk.
That evening, results were posted.
Armand's name glowed at the top of the list.
The crowd around the notice board buzzed in awe.
Some clapped his back, others whispered his name with admiration. Zion's name was just below his. Second place. For the first time in his life, Zion was not number 1.
His face burned red as he ripped the results sheet from the board, crumpling it in his fist.
"This isn't over," he growled under his breath.
But even as he raged, Armand stood at a distance, staring at the results with tears in his eyes.
Not of fear, but of hope.
For the first time, the future felt possible.
Yet he knew. Zion would not let this stand.
The corridors of the school buzzed after the results were pinned.
Armand's name gleamed at the top of the list, and students couldn't stop talking about it. Can you believe it? Armand, the boy from the slums, beat Zion? He finished the paper before anyone else, unbelievable. For many, it was just gossip. But for Zion, it was humiliation carved deep into his pride. His jaw tightened every time he overheard the whispers. Even his own friends had begun speaking of Armand with reluctant admiration. That was the breaking point.
Enough, Zion hissed to his two closest allies as they sat in the empty sports shed after school.
I won't just beat him in the next round.
I'll destroy him before he even gets there.
One friend smirked. How? Zion's eyes gleamed cold.
By making sure he never gets the chance to compete. That night, while Armand bent over his notebook under the dim bulb, Zion was crafting his own plan.
Not with equations, but with lies.
The next morning, a teacher's voice thundered across the classroom.
Armand! Principal Rahim wants to see you. At once. The students turned, murmuring.
Armand froze, his heart leaping into his throat.
What could the principal want with him? He walked nervously into the office, clutching his notebook tightly.
Inside sat Principal Rahim, his expression stern, his fingers steepled.
On the desk lay a letter.
Armand, Rahim began slowly, I've received a troubling report.
Someone claims you cheated on the test. Armand's eyes widened. Cheated? Sir, I didn't.
I swear. Rahim's gaze was sharp. The letter says you obtained the paper early. That your answers were too perfect to be genuine.
Armand's knees weakened. No, sir, that's not true. I worked all night, every night. Please, you must believe me. Rahim studied him in silence, his face unreadable.
Finally, he said, for now, you will still continue in the process. But know this, if there is truth to this accusation, you will be disqualified immediately.
Armand's throat tightened. He nodded weakly, clutching his bag as he left the office.
Outside, leaning casually against the wall, Zion watched him walk past. His smirk was sharper than ever.
The whispers began almost instantly. They say Armand cheated. Really? I thought he was smart, but maybe it was just a trick. I knew it.
No poor boy could beat Zion fairly. Each word sliced through Armand like a knife. He tried to block them out, but their sting lingered. That evening, he returned home, his eyes hollow.
Amy noticed immediately. What happened, Beta?
He tried to smile, but the tears betrayed him.
They think I cheated, Amy. They think I don't deserve it.
Her hands trembled as she cupped his face.
Armand, listen to me. Truth always shines through. Lies may be loud, but they are weak. You keep fighting. Your honesty will protect you.
Her words lit a fragile flame in his heart. But he knew Zion would not stop here. The second test came a few days later, an oral exam before teachers.
Armand entered the hall nervously.
He could feel the weight of suspicion hanging over him. Every teacher's eye seemed sharper, every whisper heavier.
Zion performed first, striding up with confidence.
His answers were polished, practiced, delivered with arrogance. He smirked as he left the stage, tossing Armand a mocking glance. Then it was Armand's turn. He stood trembling at the front, his hands sweaty.
For a moment, his mind went blank.
He saw the whispers, the doubt, the suspicion. But then, he remembered Amy's words. Truth always shines through. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and spoke. And as he spoke, something changed. His fear melted into passion. His voice grew steady, his explanations crisp, his logic alive. He didn't just answer the questions, he painted the solutions, guiding the panel step by step, turning numbers into stories, problems into beauty. By the end, the hall was silent. One teacher whispered, "Incredible." Another nodded slowly. He didn't memorize. He understood. For the first time, Armand saw their eyes soften, not with suspicion, but with respect. But outside the hall, Zion's face darkened. His first sabotage had failed. And failure only made him more dangerous. That night, he whispered to his friends, if lies won't stop him, then maybe fear will. The following week, the competition narrowed. The list was posted, Armaan and Zion were chosen as the two school representatives. The crowd gasped. Some cheered Armaan, others muttered in doubt. But no one could deny he had earned his place. Armaan stared at his name, his heart pounding. A dream within reach. But then, from the corner of the hall, Zion's voice cut through. Congratulations, slum boy, he sneered softly, stepping close. You're walking straight into my trap. The Olympiad won't just be your test, it'll be your end. Armaan's chest tightened. He looked into Zion's eyes, and for the first time, he saw not just hatred, but something far darker. Obsession. The announcement echoed through the school corridors. Armaan and Zion have been selected to represent our institution at the City Olympiad. For some, it was a shock. For others, it was inevitable. But for Armaan, it was a moment that felt both like a victory and a storm brewing on the horizon. The bus ride to the Olympiad was a journey in itself. Armaan sat by the window, clutching a worn-out notebook filled with scribbles and formulas. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, its towers gleaming under the sun. He had never seen such tall buildings, such wide roads, such crowds. Amy's words lingered in his ears, this is your chance, Beta. Don't let fear sit in your heart. Carry honesty with you like a sword. He tried to steady his racing heartbeat. Beside him, Zion lounged with careless arrogance, flanked by his two friends. They laughed loudly, mocking every bump in the road. At one point, Zion leaned over. Enjoy the view while you can, Armaan, he whispered. Because once we're there, you won't last a single round. Armaan looked out of the window again, refusing to answer. Silence was his only shield. The Olympiad venue was breathtaking, a massive hall draped in banners, with students from prestigious schools across the city. Their uniforms were crisp, their shoes polished, their accents sharp. When Armaan stepped inside, his worn blazer and scuffed shoes drew immediate stares. Some students whispered, covering their mouths to hide their laughter. Which school is he from? Look at him. Probably a charity case. Armaan's ears burned, but he kept walking. Every step was heavy, yet filled with quiet determination. Principal Rahim, who had accompanied them, walked behind. His gaze shifted between Armaan and Zion, his expression unreadable. The first round began, a written test designed to push even the brightest minds to the limit. Armaan sat at his desk, pencil in hand, heart pounding. The paper was difficult, far more advanced than anything he had seen before. For a moment, fear clawed at him. But then, he remembered the nights under the flickering bulb, the endless equations scribbled into his notebook, the mistakes corrected again and again. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and began to write. His hands moved with certainty. Each problem became a puzzle to untangle, each equation a bridge to cross. Time faded away. When the timer rang, Armaan was the only one still scribbling until the very last second. Zion, meanwhile, leaned back smugly, tossing his paper onto the desk as though the contest was beneath him. After the test, results were posted quickly. Armaan's name was near the top. Not first, but among the leaders. Zion was further down. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Who is this Armaan? He's beating city kids? But while admiration began to grow, so did envy. Armaan felt the eyes on him, some curious, some hostile. And Zion's face darkened like a storm. That evening, at the guest hostel where contestants were staying, Armaan walked into his room to find his notebook missing. His heart sank. That notebook held everything, his practice work, his formulas, his only guide. Panic surged through him as he searched every corner. Then, outside the window, he heard faint laughter. He rushed to the corridor, and there was Zion, tossing the notebook between his friends like a toy. Looking for this? Zion smirked, holding it up. Armaan's fists clenched. Give it back. Zion stepped closer, his voice a low hiss. Why should I? You don't deserve to be here. You're nothing but a beggar wearing a school uniform. The words cut deep, but Armand stood tall.
I may be poor, but my knowledge doesn't belong to you or your lies.
He reached out, but Zion yanked the notebook back. One of his friends laughed and added cruelly, maybe we should just burn it.
For a terrifying moment, Armand thought they would. But then, footsteps echoed.
Principal Rahim appeared at the end of the hall, his gaze sharp.
What's going on here? Zion quickly shoved the notebook into Armand's chest, masking his smirk with false innocence. Nothing, sir. Just helping him find his things. Rahim's eyes lingered on them both.
He said nothing further, but Armand could feel the principal's suspicion heavy in the air. That night, Armand lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his notebook clutched to his chest. The Olympiad was only beginning, and already Zion's games were growing crueler.
He whispered into the darkness, I won't give up. Not here. Not now.
The second day brought a new challenge, a live stage problem-solving round, with students solving equations on giant boards in front of an audience. When Armand's name was called, his legs trembled as he climbed the stage. The crowd felt enormous, hundreds of eyes fixed on him. He picked up the chalk, staring at the complex problem written before him. His mind blanked for a second. Then, he remembered Amy's gentle voice, her faith, her endless sacrifices.
He tightened his grip and began writing.
Slowly at first, then faster. Step by step, his solution unfolded across the board. The audience leaned in, whispering in awe. And when he finally placed the chalk down, the entire hall erupted in applause.
Zion, watching from below, clenched his jaw so tight it hurt. His hands trembled with fury. By evening, Armand had become the name everyone was whispering. Who is he? He's from some small school. Can you believe it? Zion isn't the star anymore. This boy. Armand, he's the real challenger. But Zion wasn't done. That night, he cornered his friends again.
His voice was sharp, dangerous.
If stealing didn't work, then tomorrow we'll make sure he can't even stand on stage. One friend hesitated. What do you mean? Zion's eyes gleamed. An accident. Nothing too big. Just enough to ruin his chances.
The friends exchanged nervous glances. And outside the room, just around the corner, a shadow froze. Someone had overheard Zion's plan. Someone who now had to decide whether to stay silent or warn Armand before it was too late.
The night before the third round of the Olympiad, silence hung heavy in the hostel corridors. Most students were asleep, saving their energy for the challenges ahead. But in one dimly lit corner, three boys whispered like conspirators.
Zion leaned forward, his voice sharp as glass. Tomorrow, Armand won't even make it to the stage. We'll finish this once and for all. One friend shifted uncomfortably.
But, what are you planning exactly? Zion's smirk was cold. Something simple.
The stairs.
He takes them every morning. A little oil spilled, a slip, and he's out. No more competition.
The other friend chuckled nervously, but the first frowned.
Zion, this isn't just a prank. He could get hurt badly. Zion's eyes flashed. Good. That's the point.
What Zion didn't know was that someone had overheard. Bilal, a boy from another school, had been on his way back from the washroom when he caught their hushed voices. He froze in the shadows, heart pounding. He didn't know Armand well, but he had watched him during the contest, sincere, hard-working, different from the arrogant Zion.
Bilal hesitated. Should he get involved? Or stay silent and safe?
Finally, he whispered to himself, if I stay silent, I'm no better than them.
Morning came.
The hostel buzzed with nervous energy as contestants hurried to breakfast. Armand walked slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. He had barely slept, his mind replayed the problems, strategies, and his mother's hopeful smile. As he stepped toward the main staircase, Bilal rushed forward.
Armand! Wait!
Armand blinked, surprised.
Yes? Bilal glanced around, lowering his voice. Don't take the stairs. please. Zion, he's planned something. I heard him last night. Arman's stomach dropped. Planned what? Bilal swallowed. He was going to make you fall. Heard you. I think he spilled oil. Arman's eyes widened. Slowly, he stepped closer to the staircase and saw it. A faint sheen across the steps. One wrong step, and he would have tumbled down hard. His hands shook. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. But then he turned to Bilal, whispering, "Thank you. You may have saved me." Bilal nodded, eyes serious. "Be careful. He won't stop easily." The third round began soon after. This time, it was a team-based challenge. Groups of 4 had to solve a massive puzzle together under time pressure. Arman found himself grouped with students he didn't know. They eyed him skeptically at first, his appearance still drew doubt. But when the challenge began, his clarity and quick thinking stunned them. "Try this equation first," he urged, pointing. "It unlocks the second part." "Wait, how do you know?" one girl asked, skeptical. "Because the sequence matches the pattern from the last contest," Arman explained rapidly, his chalk flying across the board. Within minutes, he had pulled them into rhythm. The group worked like a machine, each solving a piece under his guidance. And when the timer rang, their puzzle stood complete, first among all teams. The judges exchanged approving nods. The audience clapped thunderously. But Zion, standing with his own group that had failed halfway, was livid. His plan to cripple Arman had failed. Worse, Arman's leadership had shone brighter than ever. After the round, Zion stormed out of the hall, fists trembling. His friends trailed behind nervously. "This isn't over," he hissed. "If accidents won't break him, then I'll break him myself." But what Zion didn't notice was Principal Rahim watching from a distance, his sharp eyes narrowing. Rahim had begun to sense a pattern, and Zion's mask of perfection was slipping. That evening, as the contestants walked back to their hostel, Arman felt both exhausted and uplifted. For the first time, other students were smiling at him, some even patting his shoulder. "You're really good, man. Without you, our team wouldn't have finished." Their respect warmed him, but deep inside he knew Zion was far from finished. And just as he turned the corner into his room, he found something shocking. Pinned to his bed was a note written in harsh, uneven letters. "Back out now, or next time, you won't be so lucky." Arman froze, his breath catching in his throat. His eyes darted around the empty hallway, but no one was there. He clutched the note, his heart pounding. Fear pressed heavy in his chest. But slowly, he crumpled the paper in his fist. "No," he whispered to himself. "I won't run. No matter what he tries, I won't stop." Yet deep inside, he knew the battle ahead wasn't just about math anymore. It was about survival. The City Olympiad had reached its final stage. Only a handful of students remained, each carrying the pride of their schools. The competition hall was brighter, larger, and packed with spectators now, teachers, parents, even reporters. For Arman, it was both thrilling and terrifying. He had never stood before such a crowd. Every eye on him seemed to whisper the same question: does he belong here? He sat in silence, clutching his pen, his mind repeating Amy's words over and over. "Truth always shines through. Hard work never betrays you." But somewhere across the hall, Zion's sharp gaze burned into him like fire. That morning, Zion's friends noticed something different. He wasn't just angry, he was obsessed. "We tried everything," one muttered nervously. "The notebook, the stairs, the rumors. Nothing worked. Maybe we should just stop." Zion spun on him, eyes blazing. "Stop? Do you know what it means if he wins? I'll be a joke." Me, Zion, humiliated by a slum boy. "No. I won't allow it." His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. "If I can't win by skill, then I'll win by destruction. Arman will regret ever stepping into this school." The words chilled even his loyal friends. The next round was announced, a head-to-head duel. 2 contestants at the board, solving the same problem live. The fastest, most accurate solution would win.
Armand's heart skipped a beat when he saw the matchups. His name was drawn against Zion. The hall erupted with murmurs. This was the battle everyone wanted to see, the poor boy versus the rich heir, the underdog versus the favorite. Principal Rahim sat in the front row, his eyes sharp, his hands folded. He knew this round would reveal more than numbers.
The bell rang.
Armand and Zion stepped up to their respective boards. Chalk in hand, both stared at the complex problem written before them.
At first, silence.
Then chalk scraped rapidly. Zion attacked the board with speed, his hand flying. He was fast, almost too fast, writing with reckless confidence. His friends cheered loudly from the audience. Armand, in contrast, moved slower. Careful. Deliberate. He paused often, his mind mapping each step before his hand followed. At one point, Zion sneered across the stage. "Too slow, Armand. You'll never beat me like this." Armand ignored him, his focus unshaken. His solution grew like a sturdy building, brick by brick, steady and strong. Minutes ticked by. Then, gasps rippled through the audience. Zion's furious writing had led him into a mistake. A small error, but enough to collapse his entire equation. His face paled as he realized. Meanwhile, Armand's board stood clean, clear, precise. His final answer glowed with certainty. When the judges raised their hands, the verdict was unanimous. Armand winner. The hall erupted. Some students clapped, others shouted his name. For the first time, the whispers were not mocking but admiring. But Zion. He stood frozen, his chalk clattering to the floor. His chest heaved with rage. In front of everyone, his friends, the teachers, the press, he had lost. Later, in the locker room, Zion smashed his fist into a wall. His friends hovered nervously. "Zion, let it go," one begged. "He beat you fair and square." But Zion turned on them with wild eyes. "Fair? There's nothing fair about this. He's stolen everything from me, my pride, my respect, my title." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If he wins the Olympiad final, then my life is finished. I'll make sure that doesn't happen even if it means ending his." The words hung in the air like poison. That evening, Armand sat alone in his hostel room. He should have been happy, but unease gnawed at him. The note he had received still haunted him. He thought of his mother's tired hands, her sacrifices. If something happens to me here, what will become of her? A knock interrupted his thoughts. Bilal entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "Armand," he whispered, "I heard Zion. He's planning something worse. I don't know what, but be careful tomorrow. The final round is going to be dangerous." Armand's blood ran cold. Dangerous? But it's just math. Bilal shook his head. Not for him. For him, it's war. The final day dawned. The Olympiad Hall was packed beyond capacity. Students, teachers, parents, even local news crews had come to witness the last showdown. Banners waved. Cameras flashed. The stage was set. Armand stood backstage, heart racing. His hands trembled as he adjusted his blazer. He whispered to himself, "This is for Amy. This is for truth." But in the shadows nearby, Zion watched him with eyes like burning coal. And in his pocket, hidden from view, lay something small, sharp, and deadly, not meant for solving equations, but for ensuring Armand never solved anything again. The trap was ready. The final battle was about to begin. The Grand Hall of the City Olympiad was unlike anything Armand had ever seen. Golden drapes hung from the high ceiling, spotlights glared down on the wide stage, and rows upon rows of chairs were filled with students, teachers, principals, and even journalists. Cameras flashed, capturing every moment. It was no longer just a contest. It was a spectacle. Armand stood at the edge of the stage, heart pounding in his chest like a drum. He tugged at his blazer nervously, glancing around. For a poor boy who had once studied under the flickering bulb of a broken lamp, this hall felt like another world. But deep inside, he reminded himself, numbers are the same, whether written in chalk on cracked walls or on the brightest board in the city. This was his battlefield now.
The announcer's voice boomed across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, today we witnessed the final round of the City Olympiad. Our last two contestants, Zion Khan, representing Bright Future Academy, and Arman Ahmed, representing the same school.
The audience erupted in applause. But while some clapped for Zion's reputation, others cheered for Arman, the boy whose rise had shocked everyone. Arman's eyes scanned the crowd briefly. For a fleeting moment, he imagined his Ami sitting there, smiling proudly. That image gave him strength. Backstage, hidden from the audience, Zion's hands tightened around a sharp metal compass he had slipped into his pocket. His face was calm on the outside, but inside, rage burned like wildfire. This is it, he muttered to himself. One slip, one little accident, and no one will ever see him shine again. His friends stood nearby, pale and uneasy. One whispered, Zion, don't do this. If you're caught. Shut up, Zion snapped. No one will know. All they'll see is him falling. And me, winning. The contestants were called to the stage. Arman and Zion stood side by side under the bright lights, chalkboards in front of them. The announcer explained the rules, 2 problems, each harder than the last. Whoever solved them fastest and most accurately would be crowned champion. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. The first problem appeared on the big screen. Begin! Both boys lunged forward, chalk scratching furiously. Zion was fast, his hand flying across the board, but his haste betrayed him. Arman, steady as ever, moved slower but precise, his equations flowing like water. Minutes ticked by. Beads of sweat formed on Arman's forehead, but he stayed focused. Then, his final line clicked into place. Answer complete. The judges checked. Correct. First round, Arman Ahmed. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed wildly. Arman's heart leaped, but he didn't smile, he knew the real battle was still ahead. Zion's face twisted in rage. His grip on the compass in his pocket tightened. The second problem appeared. Harder. Longer. Designed to break concentration. As the contestants scribbled furiously, Zion glanced sideways. He saw Arman bend forward, deeply focused, lost in the numbers. Now. He shifted closer under the guise of reaching for the chalk tray. His hand slipped the compass from his pocket. He angled it low, toward Arman's foot, ready to jab, just enough to make him stumble, lose focus, maybe even bleed. But just as Zion moved, a sharp voice cut through the hall. Stop right there! The audience gasped. Principal Rahim had stood from the front row, his eyes locked on Zion. For a terrifying moment, the entire hall froze. Zion's hand froze mid-motion. The compass glinted under the lights, visible to all. Gasps spread like wildfire. Students whispered, teachers rose from their seats. Is that? He was going to. My God, he was cheating, he was sabotaging. Zion's face went pale. The compass slipped from his hand, clattering loudly to the floor. Arman turned slowly, shock flooding his features. For a moment, he couldn't even process what had just happened. Rahim's voice boomed. Security! Remove this boy from the stage immediately. 2 staff members rushed forward, grabbing Zion by the arms. He thrashed wildly, shouting, No! This isn't fair. He doesn't belong here, I'm the real champion. You can't do this to me. But his words drowned beneath the noise of the crowd gasps, jeers, whispers of betrayal. The mighty Zion Khan, exposed at last. Arman stood frozen, chalk still in his hand. His heart raced, but his body felt numb. Principal Rahim climbed onto the stage, placing a hand on his shoulder. His voice softened, though it carried for all to hear. Arman Ahmed, you don't just carry talent, you carry honesty. And honesty shines brighter than any trick. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause.
Armand blinked back tears. For the first time, he felt seen not for his poverty, but for his truth. Yet even in this moment of victory, he knew the journey wasn't over. Because while Zion had been dragged away, his last words echoed in Armand's ears. "This isn't over. I'll destroy you, no matter what it takes." The Olympiad Hall slowly emptied, but the echo of applause still lingered in Armand's ears. For a few breathtaking minutes, he had stood in the spotlight not as a poor boy from the slums, not as a charity case in a rich school, but as a champion. Cameras had flashed, microphones had been thrust forward, and everywhere he turned, voices had said the same words. Brilliant. Extraordinary. Unbelievable. Principal Rahim had walked him proudly out of the building, his hand on Armand's shoulder like a father guiding his son. Teachers from other schools stopped him to shake his hand. A journalist even asked him to pose for a photograph, something he had never been asked in his entire life. For a boy who once wondered if he even belonged in Bright Future Academy, this day felt like a dream. But every dream casts a shadow. That night, when Armand returned home, Amy was waiting at the door. Her frail body struggled to stand straight, but her smile was radiant. She had seen his photo already circulating on WhatsApp groups, even on the local news. "Beta, tu sach main kar dikea," she whispered, hugging him tight. "Your Abba would be proud. Today, you lifted his name higher than any star." Armand buried his face in her shoulder. For all the applause of strangers, this was the approval he had craved the most. But not far away, in a dark room lit only by the glow of a phone screen, another story was unfolding. Zion sat hunched on his bed, his face twisted in humiliation. His phone buzzed non-stop, classmates mocking him, social media posts exposing him, memes already spreading with his furious face on stage. Cheater Khan. Compass boy. Failed prince. Every word was a dagger. He hurled the phone across the room, his chest heaving. His so-called friends had abandoned him. His father hadn't called. Even his mother's voice, usually soft and forgiving, had turned sharp. "You've disgraced us, Zion." But instead of remorse, the humiliation hardened into hatred. His mind replayed Armand's calm face, his victory, his applause. "No," Zion whispered to the shadows. "This isn't the end. He humiliated me in front of everyone. He stole my place, my respect. I swear on everything, I will make him pay." The next day at school, the atmosphere was electric. Students crowded around Armand as he walked through the gates. Some clapped his back, others shook his hand, and many simply stared with admiration. "Armand Bhai, sign my notebook," one junior shouted. "You're a hero, Yar," another cried. For the first time in his life, Armand wasn't invisible. But among the cheering faces, one pair of eyes watched coldly from a distance. Zion, forced back to school by his father despite the scandal, stood by the fence, his jaw clenched. His pride was shattered, but his anger burned hotter than ever. Later that week, during assembly, Principal Rahim called Armand to the stage. "Students," his voice rang out, "our school has always believed that talent knows no boundaries. Today, that belief has been proven true. Armand Ahmed has not only won the City Olympiad but has also reminded us all what honesty and courage look like." The hall roared with applause. Armand's hands trembled as he accepted a golden medal from the principal. His eyes stung with tears, but his heart was steady. In the back row, Zion's nails dug into his palms until they bled. That afternoon, Armand found a folded note in his locker. No name. Just a few chilling words. "Watch your back. Your story ends soon." His breath caught. He looked around the empty corridor, but there was no one. Was it Zion? Or someone else? A cold shiver ran down his spine. For the first time since his victory, Armand felt fear. That night, as he lay on his thin mattress at home, the medal resting on the shelf beside him, sleep refused to come. He replayed the Olympiad again and again in his mind, the cheers, the spotlight, the compass falling to the ground, and Zion's eyes burning with hate as he was dragged away. And then the note. Was this the price of success? To walk always with a shadow at his back?
Armand closed his eyes, gripping the medal in his hand. "I won with honesty," he whispered to himself. "And I'll face whatever comes, with the same honesty. No matter what." But outside, in the darkness of the street, a figure leaned against the corner, watching the flickering light of Armand's window. The figure's eyes glowed with vengeance. And in his hand, a phone buzzed with a new message. "Plan ready. Tomorrow, we begin." The sun rose over Bright Future Academy, bathing its tall glass windows in gold. To anyone outside, it was just another school day. But for Armand, it felt like the calm before a storm. He hadn't forgotten the note. "Watch your back. Your story ends soon." His heart was heavy, but his steps were steady as he entered the campus. Today, the school had arranged a special assembly, a celebration for his Olympiad victory. Guests from other institutions were invited, even education officials. For Armand, this should have been the proudest day of his life. But deep inside, unease gnawed at him. As he walked through the corridor, a hush followed him. Students whispered, pointing at the medal that gleamed against his chest. Some smiled, some admired, and a few, especially those loyal to Zion, stared with cold resentment. And then Armand saw him. Zion stood by the stairwell, his uniform neat, his face calm. Too calm. His eyes locked with Armand's, and for a moment, it was as if time stopped. There was no shame in Zion's gaze. Only fire. Armand looked away, his chest tightening. He couldn't afford a confrontation, not today. The assembly began with speeches, applause, and cheers. Teachers praised Armand, calling him a beacon of hope and proof that brilliance is not born in luxury, but in perseverance. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Principal Rahim stepped onto the stage, smiling warmly. "Armand Ahmed," he said, "come forward." Armand rose, his legs trembling but his head high. He walked slowly to the stage, the whole school watching. His medal glimmered as he stood beside the principal. "Students," Rahim continued, "today we honor not just a winner, but a warrior of truth. May this medal remind us all that honesty is the greatest victory." The hall erupted in thunderous applause. But amidst the cheers, a single sound cut through a faint clatter of metal. Armand's eyes flicked to the side. From the corner of the stage, he saw Zion's hand sliding something from his blazer pocket. A knife. Time slowed. Armand's breath caught. His heart pounded like a drum. For a split second, the world blurred, the crowd, the lights, the noise, and all he saw was the glint of that blade. Zion's lips curled into a whisper only Armand could hear. "This ends today." Armand's instincts screamed. He took a step back, his voice rising, sharp and desperate. "Sir! Look out!" Gasps filled the hall. The knife flashed upward, aimed not at Armand, but at Principal Rahim. In that split second, Armand moved. Without thinking, without hesitation, he lunged forward, shoving the principal aside. The blade swiped through the air, grazing Armand's arm. Pain burned, but he held his ground. Students screamed. Teachers rushed forward. Security stormed the stage. Zion thrashed like a wild animal, but this time, there was no escape. The knife clattered from his hand as guards pinned him down. "Let me go!" Zion roared. "He doesn't deserve it. None of you understand, he ruined me." His words echoed through the stunned silence. Blood dripped from Armand's sleeve. The hall was chaos, but he stood firm, chest heaving, eyes locked on Zion. For the first time, he saw not just arrogance in his rival's face, but desperation. A boy so crushed by pride and envy that he had lost all sense of himself. And Armand whispered, voice trembling but clear. "Winning means nothing, if you lose yourself." Later, after the police had taken Zion away and the hall calmed, Principal Rahim stood before the students again. His voice shook, but his words were strong. "Today, you all witnessed the difference between two paths, one built on lies and shortcuts, and one built on truth and courage. Armand saved my life. But more than that, he showed us all what it means to stand for what's right, even in the face of danger." The hall rose in a standing ovation.
Some students wept. Others chanted Armand's name. For once, Armand didn't shrink from the praise. He stood tall, the bandage on his arm a badge of his struggle. And when he glanced toward the doors, he could almost see Amy there, smiling proudly, her hands folded in prayer. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Armand walked home slowly. His medal hung heavy around his neck, but his heart felt light. He thought about Zion not with anger, but with sorrow. A boy who had everything, yet chose destruction. And he thought about himself, a boy who had nothing, yet found a way to shine. When he reached home, Amy was waiting at the door again. She pulled him into her arms, whispering through tears. "You didn't just win, Beta, you proved to the world that truth always wins." Armand closed his eyes, letting her words sink deep into his soul. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Life would throw new challenges, new rivals, new tests. But now, he was ready. Because he had learned the greatest lesson of all. Talent can open doors. Honesty keeps them open forever. Moral of the story: riches, status, and shortcuts may bring temporary glory, but only honesty, courage, and perseverance lead to true victory.